Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Today we'll be looking at starting path for Season 64, which is the debut of the new flying hero, and at first glance it looks pretty good for no IT, because we have HCs so early at 4 ER, so by the time you get there, you probably won't be losing many troops at all. And also you have tons of TD options this season. You can get a max of 200%, and having only 50 BH, it's really stacked in offense. And first we look at some tech you can ignore, then look at starting troops and use that to choose a path. And if you're buying anything in the shop, you can always support a creator. If you want to support this channel, you can use code Stoneheart. It's much appreciated. So we'll look at some tech you can ignore, which is just things that you don't really need at the start. And first off is rifles. Since you're already using RCs, rifles aren't going to do much. Yeah, they're the meat shield, but you have HCs not too long after, so why take rifles then? Next you have Scorchers, which kind of the same purpose, but it's even more better to skip, because Scorchers are pretty off path, and the more off path you go, the more you could be behind on stuff that's ahead. Next is another troop, which is Grens, and while you have RCs with such high damage, Grens are pretty useful in like a more defensive meta, and already at 4 ER you can have over 100 TD and almost no BH, so if it's stacked in offense, Grens aren't going to do much. Another troop we'll look at is Mechs, which again it's a meat shield, but they're pretty slow and will probably lag behind RCs, so won't be too helpful. And another one I'll talk about is boom mines, and reason boom mines are things you can ignore is because RCs are flying and boom mines won't really do much. But the reason normal mines are still on the list is since everyone's gonna get critters, normal mines can still, kill critters pretty fast. And already you can kind of see the path between 4 and 5 ER. When you cross off so many things, it might be better to go with that top path. And even though some things you might not use, like warriors, shock launchers, at least for a while, it also opens the door for mines and HCs, which you probably want to get pretty soon. But that's it for tech you can ignore, and now we'll look at starting troops. I think for the first time in a while, kind of only have one troop to use, which is RCs, and kind of makes sense since if you look at all the other troops, they're kind of out of the picture. Already crossed off rifles, Scorchers, Grens, and Mechs. There are warriors there, which might come in handy as a meat shield, like one bow to quickly go up and distract stuff, but for the most part, probably use mostly RCs. And that's all until 5 ER, so having a really strong troop with high damage also makes for some fast hits. Later at 4 ER we do have HCs, so they might come in handy, but I'd say there's a right and wrong time to get them, because if you get HCs when you don't have to, and RCs can get the job done, it's kind of a waste. So I just see how the meta is. If it gets too dirty, then get HCs, and you can go from there. I think this also makes sense if you look at the decks. I mean, starting with 2 ER, you have a really wide deck, and the left ramp is kind of covered with this big gap, which shouldn't matter much since you have RCs and the heroes flying. But when you go to 3 ER, you can see it's a bit better, there's more space in the back, and you get an extra ER. And 4 ER, I'd say looks almost a bit worse because you have a more of an open area and it's easier to get to all parts of the deck. But 4 ER does give you an extra ER with more health. So I'd say those kind of outweigh the cons. Even though the gap on the left side goes away, I think it doesn't matter in the first place since if you have flying troops then they don't care about gaps regardless. And we'll take a brief look at 5 ER, which I'd say is even better than 4 since you just have more area to travel towards. And as with all the other ERs, you get an extra one with more health, so it takes longer to full clear the base. But with the deck sorted and knowing we're pretty much only going to use RCs, we can look into an unlock order. So to start off, we can look at any major unlocks ahead, and it looks like the first few are new ER levels and boom cannons. So we'll keep those in mind. Since rifles probably aren't going to be useful, we can go through flare into 3 ER, and skipping that troop damage for now. mainly because these new ER levels give a lot more space, and even though you get more troop damage to take down an ER faster, it doesn't really affect speed of flying. So if it takes 5 extra seconds to go to another ER, having more TD won't help that. And at this point, you really just have 5 cannons to deal with RCs. So going towards boom cannons could be a big help, especially since we don't have shocks for a long time this season. So we can make our way to boom cannons, and even critters help also, since you can just throw them, and at least this early you don't have any mines and no flames either, so you can drop critters either on top of cannons or even machine guns blind spot. We'll go through troop health and medkit, and then to boom cannons, because that's 4 extra buildings with a lot of range and really good counter to RCs. After that, you got a few choices. You might want to go back for TD or more defense, but like we mentioned with the decks, getting an extra ER with more health could add a lot more time, and I'd say more time than anything else before. So I'd probably go for 4 ER next, and then at this point back for that TD. There are a couple boost nodes with our options, like that one under rockets with 25%, or the one next to smoke with 35%. But a good thing about getting that very first TD is you get 2 extra cannons, and if the meta is RCs, those 2 cannons can add up. And there's even a chance that machine guns or snipers might be used, because they're better at killing the flying critters out of the hero. But in any case, I'd get that troop damage next. I think at this point it's a pretty solid starting path, because the way you unlock things matters a lot and kind of cover all sides going this way. Here, if you wanted to go extreme offense, you can now get more TD or HCs, but I think for a while, if you're using RCs, you might want to keep getting anti-air stuff. So that's why next I'd pick up that proto, maybe getting a doom cannon or shock blaster, but both are good anti-air. And even getting snipers. They don't do a ton of damage, but when you have 4 grouped up, you can still kill a few RCs. And at this point, maybe you can choose any other options you want. Whether you want to go more defense, there's a few options like getting more building damage, help out those snipers. Rockets aren't a bad option either. Though if you go that way, I'd probably be careful on spending tokens, since getting max rockets early is a big help, but they cost 4 million, so if you want to go towards rockets, you shouldn't upgrade too much other stuff, especially offense. And mines are also a decent defense, since they can counter critters pretty well. And if you want to go the more offense side, you can choose that also. Getting more TD, you have 2 options. If you add up all of them, that's like 110, so you can just melt through buildings. And HCs are also there too. And like we said before, once you get HCs, you probably won't be losing many troops at all. Now we don't have heavies at this point, so don't think you can really HC rush, or it might not be as fast as RCs. But they can still come in handy by tanking the first few shots of cannons and boom cannons. So maybe the best option at this point is going towards that direction. Smoke and warriors, mines are also benefit for defense, and then getting HCs. You don't really have to choose now, but just things to keep in mind. One thing I'll mention is, I'm sure some people want to get that building health at 5 ER pretty soon, but since you have to get through boom mines and mechs, it might be good early at 4 ER, but I think in the long run, it would just make sense to get it after 5. It's not a real expensive tree, so if you keep collecting all your chests, then you should finish most of it. And a good starting path helps with that. We'll be streaming the start if you want to check it out, and hopefully having a few videos that first week. But that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.